Thank you, David. I'm Greg Skalka, president of the Under the Computer Hood user group in San Diego, California. I want to thank everyone who's watching here, not out in the record warm February temperatures across the country. It's another nice day here in San Diego, but that's what we'd expect in San Diego. But that's the expectation you have, and part of this presentation is about expectations and capabilities. When we're young, we have lots of capabilities. As we get older, we start losing those, but sometimes our expectations are such that we should be keeping those capabilities. No one wants to lose their capabilities. And sometimes you reach a point in life where you have a crisis. You think, I should still be able to do these kinds of things. I wish I were young again. And some people, the stereotypical remedy might be for some people to buy a red sports car or something like that, when in reality, what they should be doing is trying to increase their capabilities by maybe losing some of that extra weight or exercising more. Just as people can have a midlife crisis, your laptop could have a midlife crisis too. When you buy that laptop initially, it's got lots of capability, lots of space on the hard drive, runs fast, got all the interfaces that you need to do things with. But after a few years, when it reaches maybe midlife point, it's not running so fast. Hard drives filling up. All those Windows updates have taken its toll on the space in the hard drive and filled up the registry. Maybe there's some new interfaces or new media that's come out that your laptop can't handle. So if your laptop could speak, it might say, I'm having a midlife crisis. So this presentation is about how to help it cope. Your laptop's midlife crisis, how to help it cope. And this presentation is specifically about adding RAM to your laptop to increase its capability. But of course, if you're not sure how long your laptop could last, not sure whether you should bother trying to do something with it or not. These are all kind of generalizations, but hardware is typically current when you buy it for about 2 years anymore. Obviously, that can vary if you're buying the cutting edge type of equipment. It might last a little longer. If you're buying the cheap bargain, lowest cost laptop you can, maybe it won't last 2 years in terms of being what's really useful. But 2 years is maybe a good average. You can probably expect to avoid any repair problems for 4 years at least. But if you take care of it, you could have your computer running for 10 years or more. But the useful life, when things are still fairly tolerable in terms of use, is about 5 years probably. But as I said, this will vary with initial costs and capabilities. In general, I've found that your computer, laptop is probably good for about the useful life of the installed operating system. This computer that I'm giving this presentation on is got Windows 7 on it, and I think it's still in good shape. I can obviously now, through Microsoft's free update for Windows 10, put Windows 10 on it, but since Windows 7 security updates will be provided per Microsoft's agreement till 2020, I'm still probably in pretty good shape. As an example, I have 2 laptops, one that I bought for my wife in September 2011, and this one, which I bought in June 2012. So if you use the 2020 Windows 7 lifetime as an indicator, these might be about midlife. I gave this presentation to my user group last year when these computers were about 3 years old. Now they're about 4 years old. They're definitely into their midlife, but at about 3 years old, you could say, maybe my computer's at midlife point. Maybe I want to think about helping it out and seeing if there's things I can do to prolong its usefulness, increase its capabilities. Of course, that's going to vary on what you've got in terms of equipment in that laptop. Both of these 2 computers that I bought have 500 gig hard drives originally and 2 gig of RAM. They have USB 2, HDMI, which is pretty good capability for something that's, you know, from 2011, 2012, gigabit LAN, and 802.11n Wi-Fi, which is pretty good, a dual layer DVD-RW, a reasonable megapixel camera, and came with Windows 7. So those are still pretty good capabilities, but if you went and shopped for new laptops now, you'd find some of those capabilities are, you know, at the bottom end of the scale now, you know, bigger laptop, bigger hard drives, and other capabilities that these are lacking now. So what are the useful trade-offs in determining whether or not I'd want to do anything with these laptops? Is it time for them to go to the recycling center, or can I get more useful life out of them? What have they got going for them now? They're still fairly fast, and they still have most of the current interfaces. Doesn't have USB 3 on either of these, but for most other interfaces, it's still pretty adequate. It's got a good operating system. It doesn't have XP or something that's lost its you know, serviceability, and I could update it to Windows 10 if I wanted to. And so far, they've appeared to be very reliable. I've had no problems with them. But since they've reached this midlife or more point, what do they lack in terms of what my expectations are? Well, they could use potentially more RAM. That might speed things up. When I bought these, I just had whatever they had in them, and that might be a capability that I could do, add more RAM. Larger hard drives are certainly out there. These have 500 gig hard drives, but now you can get 1 terabyte drives for around $50 or so in a laptop format. Another capability that wasn't really that available when I bought these was a solid state drive. I could replace the hard drive in it with that and get a lot better speed. USB 3 is a capability that is now prevalent in a lot of external drives and computers, but doesn't have it in these laptops. And a Blu-ray drive would be something that would be nice to have, so I could watch Blu-ray movies rather than just DVDs. So there are things I could do, and so those are things I should consider in determining whether or not I want to upgrade this or get rid of it. The most popular laptop upgrades I've listed here in no particular precise order, but kind of that way. More memory is certainly something that will help out a lot. A lot of times laptops that are sold just, you know, stock don't have the full amount of memory that they could have because they're trying to reach a good price point to sell them, and more memory, something you could add later and increase the operating speed of your computer in terms of running programs and having more items, you know, open on your computer. But initially, when I bought these, memory for these two laptops was pretty expensive. Laptop memory prices generally go down, as do hard drive prices, but memory doesn't really follow the same curve as hard drive prices. I've found that hard drive prices will tend to drop for a given price until maybe the hard drive gets down to about $40, $50. You seldom see a hard drive that's available for less than that, and then they just kind of drop off the map. Memory, on the other hand, being not as standardized, so that, you know, you've got to really watch out what kind of memory you're buying, and we'll get into that more later, doesn't do that as much. It'll go down after it's introduced to a certain point, but then the price can go back up after it becomes a little more rare for that older style of memory, once memory manufacturers and module manufacturers are building more of a newer, faster type of memory for newer laptops, then the older memory does become more expensive. So you might want to try and time it at the sweet spot. If you bought your laptop early when that laptop's processor and memory technology were higher, it would cost you a lot more to buy it initially. If you wait till it's down at the bottom of that curve, maybe a couple, 3 years into the life of the laptop, you could get it for a little bit cheaper, but wait too long and the memory might be more expensive. As I said, larger hard drive is a popular upgrade. It's pretty easy to do. And as laptop hard drives are pretty standardized, put a larger one in as long as you don't exceed the capability in terms of size what that laptop can handle. Solid state drive is also another popular upgrade. A lot of people, now that solid state memory has dropped greatly in price, like to do that. That will improve your laptop's capability a lot too. Faster interfaces are always good, but they're often harder to add to an existing laptop. You might be able to add with a USB dongle a better Wi-Fi connection, but things like USB 3 or gigabit internet or HDMI often more difficult because the high-speed buses for the processor that would be necessary to tie into to add those interfaces are not a lot of times readily available. The laptop that I'm using right now doesn't have any expansion capability that would allow me to add USB 3 or anything else like that. But my wife's laptop does have an expansion slot, which you can purchase modules that will add USB 3 or HDMI or other types of interfaces like that to the laptop after the fact. Blu-ray drive is another popular upgrade. You can get a external Blu-ray drive, just runs off of USB 2, and that will allow you to watch your Blu-ray movies on your older laptop. I've put new battery on here with an asterisk. It's not really an upgrade because you're not maybe adding battery capability, but as your battery ages, it will retain a charge less and less. And so one thing you can do to maybe breathe new life into your laptop after a couple years, if you're noticing that it doesn't hold a charge as well, is to buy a new battery, and those are often readily available on the internet. But this talk is going to center on adding memory to a laptop. Why would you want to add additional memory? Well, when your processor starts up, it's getting all of its information from the hard drive. Ultimately, that's the non-volatile storage that you've got in your laptop for programs, for data, for photos, for everything. And unfortunately, especially for a mechanical hard drive that rotates, not a solid state drive, it's a very slow interface. And so when you're booting up your computer, it's having to take all of that operating system information off of the hard drive, and processor has to wait all that time to get that information. Now, in your laptop, in between the hard drive and the processor's got a couple of different kinds of memory. It's got cache memory built on the processor, which is very fast but very small, that is very easy to access, and then the processor will keep a lot of information it needs in the short term in that cache memory. But then your normal static RAM or SD RAM is where it will try and keep information that it anticipates needing in the short term, rather than having to go to the hard drive for everything. If it's going to load a program, it'll tend to try and put all of that program information in blocks into your RAM and then run out of the RAM, because that's a lot faster. As it finds it needs more information, it'll pull another block off the hard drive into the RAM. As you open programs, open a spreadsheet, all of that data will be in RAM. And if you switch windows, it's hopefully has that information in RAM rather than on hard drive, and can get to that information much faster. Now, as you do more things and start opening more programs, build bigger spreadsheets, if you don't have that much RAM, that RAM gets full, and the next time it needs something that's it's been accessing before, it can't get to it. It's got to go to the hard drive to get more information. So it will swap something out of the RAM, and put new information from the hard drive into RAM. Now, when it needs that other information, it's swapped back to the hard drive again, it's got to go back to the hard drive. So it may be constantly swapping back and forth from RAM to hard drive. Adding more RAM will allow you to have fewer swaps, will allow more programs to be open, larger spreadsheets, so that when you're starting on your editing your spreadsheet and go down way to the bottom, it's not taking a long time to come up because it's pulling data out of a swap file on the hard drive. It's right there for you. Adding enough RAM to eliminate swapping can make a computer run 10 to 50 times faster for these types of applications. So it does help. A lot of times, if you add some, you really don't see it that much unless you're really taxing your memory, but it does help to add some additional RAM if your computer can allow it. Now, can you add more RAM to your laptop? If you've got a laptop that's kind of built on the MacBook Air type of philosophy where it's thin and light and there's no access to anything on the bottom, then probably not. But most normal laptops that have some access doors on the bottom of the laptop will allow you to add additional memory. It's in the form of DIMMs or dual inline memory modules, and these are in sockets inside the laptop. And so what you would need to do is remove or add modules. If there's additional sockets that are unused in your laptop, you can add new memory modules, or if there aren't, buy larger modules in terms of size and remove older, smaller capacity modules and put the larger ones in. But you have to note that the type of memory allowed and the maximum memory that your laptop can handle is a fixed thing specified by the laptop manufacturer. And so you've got to be cognizant of that when you're going out to look for additional memory. You've got to determine, can I actually add more, or did the laptop come with the maximum that the laptop manufacturer would allow for that configuration when I bought it? If that point is met, then you can't do anything. But if you can add more, then you could consider that. How would you find this out? Well, for my Fujitsu laptops, I could look in the user manual and see that it said that DDR3 1333 megahertz SD-RAM dual channel memory modules are what these laptops use, and further told me that I had 2 DIMM slots in my laptops, and they're upgradable to 8 gigabytes of total memory. So with 2 slots, I could have 2 4 gigabyte modules in it, and that would be the maximum that I could have. Now, when I look back at the purchase specifications when I bought these, I found that there was only 4 gigabytes installed in each of these laptops. So I could double the memory and improve my memory situation in both of these laptops. How could you find out how much memory you have if you didn't have this information? Well, through Windows. I know certainly in Windows 7, probably in 8 and 10 as well. You can go to the control panel, system and security system, and then it will tell you how much memory Windows thinks that your laptop has. You can also look in the BIOS, basic input-output system, that you see when the computer boots up. The first thing that happens when the computer boots is goes through the BIOS and gets things set up and then boots the operating system. To do that, you hit whatever key that is appropriate for your laptop on startup and bring up the BIOS screen, and it should tell you how much memory you've got in the laptop now. And so here's the Windows control panel, and it shows here down at the bottom, you can see in the center, it says installed memory RAM 4 gigabytes. So I've confirmed that what the manufacturer said that, or the seller that I bought it from said, I have 4 gigabytes in this laptop. Here's what you'd see if you looked on the BIOS screen. And right in the middle it says total memory 4096 megabytes, which is 4 gigabytes of memory. And it further tells me that I have 2 slots, memory slot 1, memory slot 2. Each has a 2 gigabyte or 2048 megabyte module in it. So this also additionally tells me that I don't have any spare slots with that 4 gig of memory that I've got in there. I have two 2 gig slots that are filled, or two 2 gig modules that fill the slots. So if I wanted to add memory by buying 2 4 gig modules, I would have to remove one or more of the memory DIMMs that I've got in there now and replace them. To get a full 8 gig, I'd have to replace both and put 4 gigs in. So if you're considering helping your laptop out with its midlife crisis by adding RAM, you've got to consider, can I help it out by adding more memory? Is it at full capacity? As I showed, you can check in Windows Control Panel or the BIOS to see how much you've got and look at what the manufacturer's information is in terms of what you can have as a capacity. And is there room for the laptop, to have more memory? You can check in the BIOS as I showed, or you can open the laptop up and see if there are any open slots. Here you can see in the photo that of one of my laptops that I've got two DIMMs in the 2 slots. So you can see, yes, there's no room for extras. We'll have to take some out if we wanted to add capacity. How do you access that memory? If you've got a laptop that will allow it, all you'll need is a small screwdriver, typically a Phillips, and you'll need a nice, clean, safe work surface to put this on, flip the laptop over, and then locate the access door for the memory. Remove screws that hold the door on, carefully pry the door off, and you should be able to have access to the memory. For my wife's laptop, the LH531 Fujitsu, you can see in this photo that there are 2 panels on the bottom that appear to be removable. The one on the lower left is for hard drive, and then there's a large panel, and that will access the memory and processor and other parts of the motherboard, including the fan. With that panel removed, you can see memory modules and all the rest of the motherboard. If you'd ever had a situation where your fan was making noise, it failed, it's possible you could replace it by removing this panel as well. Another example, the laptop I'm using right now for this presentation, my LH531 laptop has 3 doors on the bottom. It's got one for the hard drive in the left, one in the center is the memory one, and this L-shaped one is for access to the processor and the rest of the motherboard. So if we remove the memory door, you can see the 2 memory modules that are in the laptop. Now, if you've decided you want to do that and can put more memory into your laptop, how do you determine what kind of memory to get? Well, the first step is to check with the manufacturer and see if they have the information that you would need to specify and purchase the memory. You could perhaps purchase it from the manufacturer. That might be more expensive. If you want to try and buy it from some other vendor, Amazon or someone, you'll need the full information as to the characteristics of that memory. Fortunately, I found Fujitsu didn't give me any information for these models. The next thing you could try and do is look at the memory that came with the laptop already, and then just buy the same brand and type. Once I opened it up, I found that the originals that I had were Samsung 2 gigabyte by looking at the stickers on the memory modules and Googling them. And I found that Samsung made 4 gigabyte modules in the same family with the same specs, so that I could expand my memory to 8 gig by just buying 2 of those for each laptop. If that doesn't seem to give you an unambiguous result, you can also try and check with some of the major memory vendors to see if they can help you out. They're in the business of selling memory and often have memory finder apps on their websites. Look at Kingston and Crucial, and by putting in your laptop model number, they can probably help you figure out what kind of memory of theirs, perhaps, that you could buy that would be compatible. So in the case of my upgrade, the originals were Samsung 2 GB DDR3 1333 PC3-10600 204 pin SODIMM modules. There's a lot of verbiage there, and it all means something in terms of the speed and type of memory, the voltages it uses, and so you want to make sure that you understand the right type of memory for your laptop and get compatible memory. As I said, I was able to ascertain that I could get a Samsung memory in the same family, 4 GB version, for, at the time, $42 off of Amazon. This was mid-year last year. Interestingly, I checked this morning to try and see what the price was on these now, and on Amazon it's $60. So I was probably lucky to buy it last year and do this installation then, because now the price for this memory is maybe going up. And so that's something to consider when you're trying to do this. If you find that, well, geez, this seems like a lot of money, maybe you've reached the low point or near the low point in the curve, and memory prices are only going to go up for this older memory type, and it's not worth it. But if it is, then buy it at that time and put it in, because it may not get any cheaper. If your laptop is a couple years old, then it's probably not going to get any cheaper than that. So to do this upgrade, I would want to buy 4 of these 4 GB DIMMs and replace all of the 2 GB DIMMs, so that I'd have 8 GB each in the laptops. Now, there's a couple ways you can approach this kind of thing, especially if you're not totally sure that you know what kind of memory that you need, or are uncertain, because sometimes the return procedures for places are a little different. Amazon's pretty good, but you don't want to be buying a bunch of different things, testing it, finding out whether it works or not, and then sending it back if it doesn't. So I'd advise following what might be considered the cautious upgrade path. One thing you want to do probably first of all is run a memory test to determine that your hardware and the memory you've got now are good. If you find that it doesn't pass a memory test, then might be that your old memory is failing, and since you're going to replace it anyway, it doesn't matter. But it also could mean that the memory controller in your laptop has some issues, and you might be wasting your money putting larger memory modules into it. Once you determine that everything seems to be good, you might want to just buy 1 memory module, even though you might be planning to expand more, just to see if that type will work. And so that's what I did. I removed 1 of the 2 GB DIMMs and replaced it with the 4, and then verified that the operating system recognized that there were 6 GB there. I reran the memory test to see that everything worked. And then at that point, I could buy the other 3 4 GB memory modules and put them in. But I could also be more cautious and swap that 4 GB into the other socket on the first laptop and verify that it worked fine, and then perhaps swap that 4 GB DIMM into each of the other 2 sockets on the other laptop and see that everything worked, and then buy the 3. That would be the most cautious of all. Now, memory test is fairly easy to do because Windows has one built in, certainly in Windows 7, probably also in 8 and 10. Under Start Control Panel, you just type in memory in the search box, and it will come up with an option for diagnose your computer's memory problems. And if you click on that, then this test will restart your computer so that Windows and everything is out of the way, and run a test on the memory in your computer. There's a way to change some of the test options by pressing F1 while the test is running. But the defaults, which are a standard test with 2 passes, are typically good. And once it's completed the test program reboots to Windows and then reports the results. So here's the screen you would see when you're going to run this test. It's in the process of running here. The status bar is moved a little bit. They're in the middle of the screen, about a quarter of the way. It says it's running test pass 1 of 2, and it's 22% complete. So the overall test, all 2 passes that it's set up to do, is now 11% complete. It shows you a status at the time. No problems have been detected yet, but it'll display an overall status once the test is completed and it boots back to Windows. And you can see down at the bottom, there's an F1 indication for options. If you press that, then you can set the options for the tool. There's a basic, standard, and extended version. Typically the standard's okay. Basic just cuts some tests. Extended adds some additional tests. You can set the cache. Typically default is probably the best. And you can also set the pass count, how many times this test will run. And for purposes of just checking your memory, see if it's good, 1 or 2 passes is probably fine. You can see you can set it up to 99, or if you put in 0, it will just continue to run constantly. Some of the larger, think, why would you want to set it to run 99 or even run it continuously? If you've suspected you might have a laptop problem that occurs when you've been running for a while, after the laptop gets warm, then maybe you want to determine, is it due to a RAM problem? You can set this test to run 99 times or just continuously and let it run until the laptop is warmed up. If it fails then you know that maybe it was a temperature-related problem to the RAM. So once you've got your modules, to change them, you'd remove the memory cover. Now when you're in under the hood, so to speak, of the hardware, you want to be cognizant that you could damage the laptop or the memory you've got by static charge. The laptop memory will be shipped in an anti-static bag. Once you've opened the cover on the back of your laptop to access the memory, what you want to do is touch your finger not to any of the circuitry, but to some metal part of the case, a standoff where the screw went into, or something like that, to discharge any static charge you've got on your body, make the potential of your laptop and you the same, so that there's no risk that you'll cause a problem. If you have a anti-static wrist strap, you can use that. You can buy those and connect that to a metal part of the laptop chassis there to ensure that you're not going to impart any static charge, damage your laptop or your memory. Then to remove the memory, there are 2 retainer clips, which you'll see more about here, that will allow the memory module to pop out, pull it out, carefully put a new DIMM in, and then press it down to snap it in. Now I've got a little video to share. I found with my user group that making something like this is a whole lot easier than doing a live demonstration, because I know it will work. I did it and videoed it. So I'm going to play that now, and it will show how you can change memory on a couple of example laptops. Yours will obviously be different, but this will help maybe give you the confidence to go do something like that and give your laptop the confidence to continue past its midlife crisis.
Hi, this is Greg Skalka with the Under the Computer Hood User Group, San Diego, California. I'm going to be demonstrating how to add additional memory to a laptop. I'm going to be doing this on 2 different laptops, a Fujitsu LH531, which is right here, as well as a Fujitsu LH531 laptop. Both of these laptops have 4 gigabytes total of RAM in them right now, in the form of 2 2-gigabyte SODIMM modules. We'll be removing the modules, both of them, and then installing 2 new 4-gigabyte modules into each laptop so that each now will have a total of 8 gigabytes. This is a demonstration of adding new memory to a Fujitsu LifeBook LH531 laptop. As you can see, there are 2 access panels on this laptop. This one is for the hard drive, and this is for everything else, memory and actually the processor as well, though you wouldn't be changing that. The memory is accessed through removing these 6 screws with a small screwdriver. Once all the screws are removed, there's a little place here where you can pry the door up. It snaps in place, so you've got to unsnap it, remove it, and you have access to the DIMM memory modules and can see the fan if ever that needed to be changed, processor, and the other components. Now, before we remove the memory modules, it's a good idea to ground yourself to the chassis by using a ground strap. You can connect that strap to one of these standoffs that the rear panel connects to. That's connected to the motherboard. What you want to do is make sure you're at the same potential as the electronics, so that if there's any static electricity on your body, it's dissipated, connected through this ground strap to the chassis, so that when you go to touch these components, you don't imply a static shock to them. I'll be removing these two 2 gigabyte DIMM memory modules and replacing them with 2 4 gigabyte modules. Each of these modules sits in a socket, and there are little clips that hold them in. To remove them, pull them to the side, and the memory module tips up, and gently pull it out. And then you repeat for the second module and pull it out. To install the new memory modules are placed in just the way the others came out. Note that they are keyed, so they only go in one way. Push them in at the same angle that the other one came out. Once it's in all the way, press it down, it will snap, and you'll tell that it is in the right depth because the locking mechanism will fit into the notch on the side of the module correctly. Repeat for the second one, which goes above the first, and the memory is installed. To install a cover, simply put the tabs in at the bottom, press to snap it in, and then install the 6 screws. Once all 6 screws are installed, memory upgrade is complete. Now we'll verify that all of the memory was recognized. In Windows 7, go to the Start menu, Control Panel, System and Security, System, View Amount of RAM and Processor Speed, and it shows now that there's 8 gigabytes of installed memory. To test memory, Go back to Control Panel, System and Security, type in Memory in the search field, and you'll see under Administrative Tools, Diagnose your computer's memory problems. Click on that, and then to run the memory diagnostics, click this. It will reboot the computer and run a diagnostic. Now this in the default test is going to run it twice. You can hit F1 to change that to one pass, but we'll let it run twice. You can see it making progress. It will complete the test and then reboot back to Windows to indicate whether the test passed or not. At this point, it's run through one complete cycle of the test and shows no problems have been detected yet. It's completing the second pass, and then it will reboot back to Windows. And now it shows the Windows Memory Diagnostic has no memory errors detected. Now we'll be working on the 14-inch Fujitsu LH531 laptop. As you can see, it's a little different. It has 3 removable panels, one for the hard drive, one for the memory only, and then one that covers the processor and heatsink. So we only need to remove this one. For the memory, it only has one screw. I should be able to pry the door up to reveal memory modules. Now with the access cover removed, you can see the memory modules. There isn't a convenient place to clip a ground strap to ground yourself for static purposes. So before trying to do any work on these, it's a good idea to touch the clip or this metal piece here, which should be grounded to the internal chassis of the laptop to discharge any static that you have on your body before you start removing them. And just like with the other ones, there are a couple of clips. We'll pull to the side, and the memory module will just pop up, and you'll gently pull it out. And repeat with the lower module, like so. You might have to wiggle it a bit to get it out. Note that the old modules have 4 memory ICs per side. The new modules have 8 memory ICs per side. Once again, the modules are installed in the same way. The alignment tab indexing them so you can't put them in backwards. Press them down until they snap in. Install the second top module. Make sure it's in all the way. Snap it down. Once everything is latched, they're installed. Then it's just a matter of putting the door back, installing the screw, and the laptop is ready to go. Once the memory has been installed and the memory verified and tested, this installation is successful as well. So both laptops now have 8 gigabytes of memory.
So now that we've seen how to do it, you can go out and update your memory if necessary. Once the new memory is installed and verified, your laptop will feel better about itself. Get over that midlife crisis. So I'd like to thank you all for your attention, and we'll entertain any questions at this point.